Hey guys, Preston here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to start our draft grade series, starting with the AFC North. I'm going to go alphabetically here. So first up would be the Baltimore Ravens. First off, I want to give a clear Steelers bias here. I'm a Steelers fan, so think of that what you will. I'm going to be as unbiased as I can. And honestly, the entire division had a real good draft day. Can't say that about some other divisions. NFC North. Either way, we're going to break through every division, starting with the North. I'll probably go North, AFC, NFC North, East, Southwest, probably something like that. So anyways, first up, the first pick the Ravens had was Patrick Queen, linebacker out of LSU. By the way, you see me looking up this because I pulled up the draft tracker on CBS Sports. They give their own grades, so I can give you them and then give you theirs and then mine probably. So the Ravens picked Patrick Queen, linebacker at LSU first. They loved the pick and gave it a B. I'd probably give it an A. It's almost ridiculous, kind of the draft luck that the Ravens had. I'm not to discredit them at drafting. They're good at drafting, but the fact that multiple teams passed on Patrick Queen, like the Saints and the Packers, etc., the draft, guys who they really shouldn't have, Jordan Love, the offensive lineman. I think Patrick Queen would have been way more valuable for the Saints than that lineman, but that's for another video, obviously. But Patrick Queen fell right into the Ravens' lap, and the fact that Mosley is gone, this is a great pickup. A kid who can play the middle of the defense, should develop nicely, and just be another good linebacker for the Ravens to have. Their second pick, sorry, a little bit small kids down here. Siblings. Either way. J.K. Dobbins was their second pick, 55 overall. This was whatever. So they used their second round pick on J.K. Dobbins. They gave him, CBS Sports gave this pick a C+. I'd probably say B- maybe. I don't know, because he's a good player, but he's also he wasn't the top running back in the draft. He's probably the fourth or fifth taken, right? Some people had him as maybe the second best running back in the whole draft. He went after guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Cam Akers, maybe Swift. I can't remember if he went after Swift, and Jonathan Taylor. So he wasn't the number 2 guy or number 3 guy, but he was picked. The only question here is the talent's undeniable, but the question is why would Baltimore pick them? They have a backfield. Mark Ingram is still solid for his age. The kid underneath, I'm sorry I forget his name. Ravens fans should know him. He's pretty good too. I don't got his name, but he was a solid guy. He did well in the games he showed up. So it doesn't make sense. Running back depth was definitely not the top need. It's definitely a loaded running back room though, so I guess the rich get richer. Still an interesting pick. In round 3, they managed to land Justin Nadabuki, defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. This was a good pick. I am a little surprised he fell. There was definitely talk about him being in the second round, but I'm guessing the need was Justin Nadabuki out of defensive lineman. He probably fell just because defensive tackle, I guess, wasn't as big as a need this year. But just based up, CBS Sports gave this a B+. I mean, he's a good defensive lineman. Definitely not their biggest need, but they did trade Chris Wormley to the Steelers, so I guess getting just another dude for the defensive line makes sense. And it was a good value for where it was. I'd probably agree with the B+ there. Their other round 3 pick, this is the thing. I don't know who had the most picks out of the AFC North, but man, it felt like that day 2, the Ravens were picking forever. I don't know how they got all these third-round picks. Ravens fans, enlighten me. What was traded away or traded for? I don't know. Con picks, who knows? Either way, their next third-round pick 92 overall, was Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver out of Texas. Apparently, he's a rare slot receiver. He's faster than he's quick. Tiny frame, tracks strong, reliable hands. Solid catch. So he adds speed to the Ravens wide receiver group, basically. They gave it a B+. For a third-round pick, it's not bad. I don't know much about Duvernay, I'm not going to lie, but everything was mentioned on the strength of the wide receiver class, so I'm sure he'll be a decent option. I mean, they've addressed wide receiver a lot the last couple drafts. They got Miles Boykin in the third round, was it last year as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Not a bad pick, though. B+. Yeah, sure. I mean, wide receiver isn't their biggest strength. Add another guy in there, especially a fast guy, will make it good because those quick little short routes is probably great for Lamar Jackson's skill set at the moment. And their next third-round pick, I told you have a lot of third-round picks, is Malik Harrison, the linebacker of Ohio State. I like this pick. It's another middle linebacker. Apparently he's a run-stopping specialist. That's what they described him as. He can play the middle, I believe. and Baltimore has really helped their linebackers this draft. They added Queen and Harrison, and that really just shores up what maybe their biggest need on defense was. They gave it a B. Probably give it that might be an A, maybe a B though. That's a B plus probably. That's a good pick, especially in that late in the third round position they needed. Kind of wish Pittsburgh addressed middle linebacker, but we're not there yet. Their next third round pick and final third round pick finally is Tyree Phillips, offensive lineman out of Mississippi State. They said it might be a little early than him, but they could probably move him to guard, is what it sounds like. It's a good pass protection. Okay, so it was a little. So Yonda retired, so I'm not sure how this guy would fill in, but just throwing some offensive lineman, getting offensive lineman depth in general after the first 2 rounds kind of just makes sense, so he can fit in their system and could be a valuable backup or maybe even compete for that Yonda role. Honestly, I don't know a lot about the Ravens' current O-line, so I don't know if they already have someone to fill in for him or if they're just going to throw competition in there, because their very next pick in the 4th round was actually Ben Bredesen, offensive lineman out of Michigan, another safe kind of pick, offensive lineman. They said a decently high floor. And he's a decent player. Low, mid ceiling, high ceiling, who knows? He has good experience, offensive guard too. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe he can compete for a spot too. Either way, solid depth, and the Ravens are just continuing to solidify their already very strong offensive line. All right, and then in round 5, pick 170, they double dipped in defensive line. This is probably one of the more interesting picks. I'm not big on this one. They already have a lot of defensive linemen, so it doesn't seem like this guy will even make the field at all. We'll have to see, I guess. Maybe they see something we don't. They've always generally been pretty good at scouting, but they gave this a D+. I'm going to say maybe a C, maybe a D as well, because they already picked a defensive lineman 2 rounds up, a solid one too, and their defensive line, they already got kind of crowded there. So let me know what you think, Ravens fans, on this pick. That's the lowest pick you had in this draft. I guess I should run through that real quick. They had multiple A's, but their lowest pick was a D+, Broderick Washington. And their highest pick was, I guess they didn't have an A+, but their highest pick was an A, which is actually the very next pick, so I'll just get to it. James Proche, wide receiver out of SMU in the 6th round. That is a very solid pick. Adds another very good, quick little route runner guy. He's got a good yards after catch value. I mean, it's just another pick that makes sense for Baltimore. Good. CBS really liked the value of the pick. They gave it an A, which was their highest graded pick in this draft. It makes sense. For the 6th round, obviously it's hard to tell what he will be, but they definitely got some names in the 6th and 7th round, which, I know these guys, which once you're that late in the draft, that might count for something where it's like you actually know the prospects still. So, a solid pick, I'd say. The next pick, their last pick in the draft, is Geno Stone, safety out of Iowa. They called him a lower-level athlete for safety spot, but plays faster than his combine and is very good in coverage and can hold his own against the run. I gave it an A-. I think Geno Stone in the 7th round is a very good pick. I'd agree that's an A right there. There's just something about the Iowa DBs. I have a lot of faith in them, especially recently. Guys like Desmond King, Josh Jackson, all those dudes. I think it's Josh Jackson, right? They've turned out well, and they've got drafted a little later than I thought they originally would. So it'll be interesting to see how Geno Stone does. Obviously, the Ravens are pretty good in the safety position, but that's a good depth guy to add, possible developmental kid for the future. So see how it goes for them. Overall, the Ravens had a very good draft. They kept getting guys where I'm like, how are they just falling in Baltimore's lap? As a Steelers fan, I hate that they had a good draft, but it's pretty obvious they've been pretty consistent with their drafting through the years, and it's another solid draft class. Honestly, that's probably an A draft. It just is. There's a couple, the most questionable ones would be getting the running back in the 2nd round. I'm going to go A-, simply because I like Dobbins, but I don't think they should have went running back with that early of a pick, or at all. Really, they didn't need one, if you ask me. And double dipping in defensive line was a little interesting. But other than that, they were all good players, and most of them were very good value picks. So I'm going to give them an A- probably. Next up in alphabetical order would be the Cincinnati Bengals. So Pittsburgh will go last. They also had the least amount of picks, so it makes sense. The Bengals obviously had the first overall pick in this draft, so hopefully they would have a good draft. It all went well, and to me, they did. They had a very solid draft with the amount of picks they had. They didn't have a lot. Baltimore still had more, but they obviously had high-value picks most of the time. So their first pick was Joe Burrell, quarterback out of LSU. He's got an A. They were all high on him. He was the number 1 quarterback in this draft. It makes sense. We'll have to see what Cincinnati does to him. Cincinnati's had good quarterbacks, Carson Palmer, Andy Dalton was okay, but we'll see if any of this kid can actually push the needle. He'll definitely need some help, though. I'll get to that. So the first step they took towards helping him was adding another offensive weapon for him to use in T. Higgins, wide receiver out of Clemson. They called him a premier rebounder in the class, good enough separation, and got a very good catch radius. They said he's a good apprentice for A.J. Green. They gave it an A+. That's an A for me. Wide receiver wasn't their biggest need, but you can factor in the fact that A.J. Green is playing on a franchise tag. He's a little injury prone. He's getting older. It'll be interesting to see if he leaves for a chance to win somewhere rather than sticking out for another kind of rebuilding year or two. Who knows how long it'll take for the Bengals or if it even goes right. So Higgins is a solid guy who could be your future or just a very, very good number 2 receiver. Either way, solid pick. Get your quarterback a weapon. All right, round 3. Pick 65, they went Logan Wilson, linebacker out of Wyoming. I believe this kid plays in the middle. He's a coverage specialist all over the field. They said he's good in zone or man, consistently makes plays on the ball, good size, solid athlete, and needs to get better at beating blocks. They gave it a B-. That's a B for me. It's a very good linebacker, and they need some help in the middle now, especially, when your best guy forever was Vontaze Burfict, you kind of get younger there and keep helping it out. And so, obviously, small school kid, so he hasn't played a lot of elite competition yet, but I definitely think he has the skill set to be a solid linebacker in the NFL. Good pick by the Bengals. Yet again, another big pick. They double-dipped at linebacker here, going Akeem Davis Gaither, another small school kid out of Appalachian State, 6'2", 224, so decent size. I guess I should mention Wilson was 6'2", 241, so almost like 20 pounds more than this kid. But Davis Gaither, electric mover, slips box, can win around the edge and flashes a coverage linebacker too. So this might be a kid who can play inside and outside, so versatility is nice. And just adding another linebacker to that Bengals linebacker room is probably essential. Their defense is not what it used to be, so getting younger there is also a good idea. I do think they could probably... There's some other things I'll mention at the end of the draft. I thought maybe they could have addressed this a little earlier or a little better. Their next pick in the 5th round was Khalid Kareem, edge player out of Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I got to see this kid a lot. He is very good. I think he got injured towards the end of the year, so that might have hurt his stock a bit falling to the 5th. But he's a very solid kid. He uses his hands very well, power edge rusher. And not a bad pick for the 5th round. I gave it an A-. I'd agree. That's probably an A. And maybe a B. It's the 5th round, though, so, you got kind of just based off value, that's a good pick for the 5th round. It just makes sense. Now we have the 6th round pick, which I do like, but my problem was the fact that they didn't address their offensive line, their horrendous offensive line, until the 6th round. That's my biggest problem with this Bengals draft is Andy Dalton got sacked like crazy. I'm pretty sure there's a Steelers game. We sacked him 8 times. You got a new franchise quarterback in, and you're not going to give him offensive line help to the 6th round? I don't get it. I know they signed I think they signed some offensive linemen in free agency, but no names I've ever heard, no big names. And the fact that they waited till the 6th to address it is a little crazy to me. I would have addressed it at least the 3rd round. Maybe even Higgins is still a good pick, so at least the 3rd round, I'd say. Maybe instead of triple dipping at linebacker, like they have, because their 7th round pick is a linebacker, maybe take one of those 3rd or 4th round linebackers and get an offensive lineman there. Because they need offensive line, and waiting until the 6th is interesting. That said, the kid they picked is good, but yet again, he's a 6th round talent. And so maybe on the Bengals offensive line, that means he'll get some playing time. But normally, that's a developmental backup kind of level player, which is pretty much what the entire Bengals offensive line is. So they're saying he's got good explosiveness, popping his punch. He's an in-betweener of tackle and guard. They're saying, so not sure what he'd be. But they had to add more offensive linemen, and so just adding one in general is a good pick. They gave it an A-. I'd say an A. But waiting so long is what hurts their draft to me. And then at the 7th round, they picked their final pick in the draft was Marcus Bailey, the linebacker out of Purdue. He's had some injury things. I think he missed most of this most recent season, and he's a little older, apparently. Only legit concerns. But he was very good when he played for Purdue on a Purdue defense that obviously wasn't their strong suit, but he was a very solid kid on that team and should do well if he can rehab properly and just stay on the field. But in the 7th round, you can afford to take kind of flyers like that. So I'd agree with their A that they had a very solid draft. They got more A's they gave them more A's than I think the Ravens had. But just real quick with their top picks, their highest grade was an A+ for T. Higgins, and their lowest grade was actually a B- for Logan Wilson. So the CBS Sports really liked this draft, and I kind of get it. They picked good players, but just the fact that they waited so long to get offensive linemen, that's still going to be an issue. Sure, he is an extra guy to throw to, and the defense will be a little better at stopping people, but if Burrell has no time to throw the ball, what's going to change? I mean, that's tough. I feel bad for the kid. He's going to get eaten alive still, more than likely, unless they do some extra things. I mean, who knows? I don't know if there's any free agent offensive lineman available or some trades they could work out. I mean, the top offensive lineman on the trade market, Trent Williams, went to the 49ers for basically nothing, and the Bengals either were not interested or didn't give a good enough offer. Who knows? Either way, their offensive line is still atrocious. It's a good draft, but I'd have to put it second to the Ravens probably. This is a tough division to grade, if I'm being honest, because everyone had a good draft. I will admit right away that the Steelers didn't have the best draft, but that's mainly purely because they didn't have a first-round pick. They had a first-round pick off the board, a third-round pick off the board, and a fifth-round pick off the board used for Minkah Fitzpatrick, the first-round pick. The third was used to trade up for Devin Bush last year, and the fifth was the only regrettable one. It was for tight end Nick Vannett. We needed a tight end at the time, but he's already gone, and we got a better one than free agency, so I'm not too mad, but losing that fifth kind of sucks. But either way, with the Browns, their first pick, 10th overall, was Jedrick Wills, tackle out of Alabama. That was a very good pick. It was the offensive tackle rankings were kind of all over the place, but Wills was very high in most of them, and all these tackles should be solid NFL players. And so this landing a tackle was the most important thing for the Browns to do, not make some weird pick, get too flashy. Get a tackle. You need a tackle. They did the right move and addressed the offensive line early, unlike the Bengals. But yet, he's a good tackle. They gave it a B. I'd give it an A, because they needed a tackle, and really in this free agency, they found a way to sign, I think it's Conklin, right? And draft Wills. That instantly shores up your outside of your offensive line. It's an instant upgrade. This offense should be better just based off that alone. Not even mentioning signing Austin Hooper and so on. Either way, their next pick was Grant Delpit in the second round. Delpit has slid considerably since before, like the way too early mock drafts of the 2020 draft class had Delpit as maybe even a top 10 player. Fell all the way to pick 44. So they labeled him a first-round talent, but he has tackling issues, but he's very good in coverage. I think it's a great value pick. The fact he fell this far is a little surprising. They give it an A-. I'd agree with that. He's got to learn how to tackle, or at least not be, he's got to commit to get better at tackling. But that's a good safety, considering I think they lost. It was Randall or one of the other safeties. Adding a safety like that helps. Plus, it's a teammate with Greedy Williams. There's probably some chemistry things there in that backfield. Back-to-back years, second-round picks spent on LSU defenders that's maybe slipped a bit more than what people thought they would. And then in the third-round pick, 88, they also had multiple third-round picks. They went Jordan Elliott, defensive lineman out of Mizzou. Very active, heavy hands is what they said. They said he plays a little too high, but he's technical. And it's not bad. I mean, it's depth for their interior to defensive line, I guess, with Larry Ogunjobi and stuff. If you get some injuries or something, he'll be a solid player. They gave it an A-. I don't know. I'd go B. I like him, defensive line, but I don't know. We'll see how he does. I also don't know a lot about the Browns' positional needs, if I'm being super, super honest. He's a good player, though, and he should do okay in whatever role they assign him. Then in the third-round pick, 97, they went Jacob Phillips, linebacker out of LSU. They said he's an athletic, jack of all trades, reliable tackle, and can battle through blocks. Has a smoothness to cover, but hasn't had a lot of production there. So they're saying he's a good depth piece with upside to maybe be a starter one day. That's not bad for, I think linebacker was pretty important considering the Browns lost Joe Schobert. So adding a kid maybe in the third round, not as high as what you'd maybe want, but it's a solid pick, and we'll see what he does. He might start right away. We'll have to see. But obviously, the LSU team was very solid last year, and that's just another LSU player picked, two of them for the Browns. This was an interesting pick. CBS Sports gave it an A, but I'm not sure why I don't agree with this. The talent is sort of there. They went Harrison Bryant, tight end out of FAU, but the thing is, you just made Austin Hooper the highest paid tight end in the NFL, and you took the fifth year of David Njoku, and you have... I'm sorry, but there's one other tight end on there, too, who played decent minutes last year. I can't remember his name. Maybe was it Clay? Maybe it was... It's like the two names together. One sec. Never mind. He might be gone now. But either way, you gave all that money to Hooper, and you still have Njoku, so I think your backup tight end, your future backup tight end probably could have been addressed either even later in the draft or for next year's draft. You have Njoku and Hooper for this year. And so this seems like more of a future pick, I guess. So you're not addressing a more immediate need, and you're drafting a tight end who probably won't even see the field till, at the very least, the season after this upcoming one. So it's an interesting pick. I give it more of a B or a C, just based off the need. It's definitely a future pick, sort of like the Packers going quarterback. So, yeah, interesting. This probably, I guess you could view this as maybe it's just the end for Njoku, but if that's it, why'd you pick up the fifth-year option? I guess they think Bryant needs time to develop, probably. So we'll just see. And in the 5th round, pick 160, they went Malik Harrison, offensive lineman out of Washington. I don't know much about this kid, if I'm being honest. They're saying he was a center, but he has elite short area quickness. So he could good in zone blocking scheme. So apparently he's a good scheme fit for the Browns. Adds depth at an offensive line, which is better now for sure with the added tackles and free agency in the draft, but it's still not going to be like the best unit in the NFL. So getting some depth in there, especially if anyone goes down. Weak offensive line injuries ruin them even more than a healthy offensive line, obviously. And then in the 6th round, their final pick of the draft was Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver out of Michigan. Pretty good receiver. I'm not sure why they needed receiver, really, because obviously they got a pretty solid receiver room. I guess there'll be a kind of a competition for that wide receiver 3 spot with Peoples-Jones. Is it Anthony Higgins and some other kids? But he's good. He's a solid player for the 6th round. That's a good value pick. They gave it an A-. It's probably an A or a B. Good value for the Browns, what they said. Great. He has good size at 6'2", 212, and he can be good, especially for that pick. I think that's a solid draft. The Browns had a solid draft. I think one of the main reasons they can't win this draft is it just feels like they don't have as much capital. The only pick I didn't like the tight end. I didn't think that was necessary, but it was still a decent tight end in a pretty weak tight end class, so you'll give them that. Their highest graded pick by CBS Sports was the A for Harrison Bryant, so we disagree completely. They had plenty of A-minuses, and their lowest graded pick was only B- for Phillips, the linebacker, and Harris, the offensive line. Overall, it's a solid draft from the Browns, but the way this played out, I think the Ravens have to be number 1 just because the amount of picks they had and how they hit on most of them. I think the Bengals are 2 just by default. The fact they had the number 1 overall pick meant they got some pretty impactful players, including Joe Burrow, and it's kind of hard to discount that. Oh, by the way, breaking news out of nowhere. The Bears are not picking up Trubisky's 5th-year option, but no one's surprised. Either way, let's go back to this. So, yeah, I think the Browns just by default kind of have to be in 3rd, but it's all a good draft. I give them like a B. It's literally like an A for the Ravens, an A- for the Bengals, like a B+ for the Browns. And honestly, the Steelers, they're probably a B. Honestly, if you talk to me, I'm going to break it down for you, obviously, but to me, that's a B. They had a B draft. Working with what they got, though, was pretty good. Okay, so we're on the Steelers, the last team in this. I got to go pretty quick because I'm limited on my time on the video recording for some reason. So Chase Claypool was the 49th overall pick in the NFL draft. He went to the Steelers, obviously. It's a very freaky receiver. His combine was similar to Megatron. He won't be Calvin Johnson, calm down, but he has a great nickname of Mapletron. But they said freaky size and combine. They're saying he'll struggle to separate, but I watched him play a lot at Notre Dame. I'm a big Notre Dame fan. I actually had his Notre Dame jersey, so it's pretty awesome. He's on my favorite NFL team now. But he's a big kid. He always fights for extra yards, and he can play special teams. I actually really like the pick. David, a B. I'd probably say an A. I mean, maybe wide receiver wasn't the top need, but based off some of the guys that were already off the board, like Antoine Winfield Jr. would have been my pick, but he went a couple picks earlier to the Bucs. I think it was a solid pick and good value, and adds the size element to the Steelers receiver room. So now Big Ben's got a big target to work with outside of the tight ends. And then in the 3rd round, pick 102, they went Alex Highsmith out of Charlotte, the edge rusher. He had his breakout year this year, and he actually did well against talented teams like Clemson and Tennessee. And so I think it's actually a good pick. He could be the future of the edge position if Bud Dupree doesn't re-sign, or just a very solid backup and an instant upgrade over to Czar Skipper and Ola Adeniyi, who is our current outside linebacker backups. They gave it a C. I don't know why. I think some people had him higher, some people had him lower. He's kind of a weird kid on draft boards. I'm going to give it a B, though. Edge isn't their biggest concern, but this draft was all about adding depth, especially since the Steelers team's already solid and the lack of draft capital. I like the pick. It was a solid pick to me. In the 4th round, they got Anthony McFarland Jr., the running back out of Maryland. He's a super fast guy. He probably could have been drafted higher if not for some injury issues. I love him, though. I think he's a great element to the Steelers' backfield. I really do think now, more than ever, Pittsburgh needs to adopt a running back by committee kind of form. It's proven to work. I mean, the 49ers don't just have one back they rely on for everything. They rotate. Same with kind of like the Chiefs kind of method. The teams in the Super Bowl this year didn't have one main back above all. They rotated. I think that's the best option for the Steelers with an injury-prone James Conner. You keep everyone fresh. They got a lot of young developmental kids, and I think make a solid group as one. And McFarland brings that speed element, and it's just great to have. CBS Sports gave that pick an A, by the way. I'd probably go B just because running back. If you're going to go running back, I feel like they probably should have done it early enough where he'd really compete with James Conner, but he's just a kid to add to the committee. Not a bad pick. I'd give it a B. Kevin Dotson, offensive lineman out of Louisiana Lafayette, was the 4th-round pick for the Steelers, pick 135, the second 4th-round pick. And Pittsburgh, they said Pittsburgh needed to prioritize the future of the interior, and we got a wide-bodied, power-based guard in Dotson. He was actually the highest-graded run-blocking guard by Pro Football Focus. He didn't attend the Combine. He was actually the first pick not to attend the Combine, but he was first-team AP All-American. And he, like I said, a very high run-blocking grade, a very good prospect with a lot of potential. There's actually a chance he could earn the starting guard spot this year over Steven Wisniewski, who we just signed in the free agency. Who was a solid backup for the Chiefs and Eagles in most recent years. So he'll actually get to compete for a starting spot right away. And in the 4th round, that's very good value. They give it a B-. So I'm giving it an A. It's a good pick, and it makes sense. He could even start this year, and he's got a very good future. And the Steelers they've proven to be good at finding offensive lineman talent. In fact, they've had a couple undrafted guys. Actually, they have 2 undrafted kids starting on their offensive line right now, and Matt Filer and Alejandro Villanueva. Ramon Foster was undrafted until he retired, so I think they know how to find offensive line talent. It'll all be about developing them. And then in the 6th round, no 5th round pick, was Antony Brooks Jr., safety out of Maryland. This is a box safety, so he could be viewed as maybe more of a Mark Barron replacement or just a solid backup for Terrell Edmonds. He might be able to compete for a starting spot, but it being a 6th rounder, I kind of find it hard to believe. But safety was a big need for the Steelers. He covers that. He's a good box safety, like I said. So really, he kind of covers depth for 2 positions, middle linebacker and a more dime backer role, and strong safety backup, which the Steelers desperately need safety depth. They could still probably address it even more, but picking one up is a pretty good value here. I like Brooks a lot. Very hard-hitting. He seems always highly motivated and a good teammate to have. They gave it an A. Yeah, I'd agree. For the 6th-round pick, it's an A, in my opinion. And then in the 7th-round pick, the Steelers went Carlos Davis, defensive tackle out of Nebraska. 7th-round picks, you don't expect a lot, so they took a flyer on a position in need of defensive tackle and a kid who tested very well. He ran a 4.83, I believe, while weighing 313 pounds, which is just super impressive. They give it a B+. I'd say, yeah, probably maybe a C. I don't know if he was projected to be drafted, but it's, like I said, it's the 7th round, so it's a flyer. So overall, guys, the Steelers' highest graded pick was Brooks with an A, and McFarland out of A, the Maryland kids. And the lowest pick was Alex Highsmith with a C from CBS Sports. Overall, the AFC North had a very solid draft class as a whole. Probably, I'd say maybe even the best out of any of the divisions as a whole. The AFC North did very, very well, which is surprising for some of the teams, mainly the Bengals and Browns. But the Steelers and Ravens have always been good at drafting value no matter where they are. You tend to trust their scouts even if you don't know the players right away. But if I had to rank them, being fair, like I said, I'm a Steelers fan. Steelers are still 4th. I'd go Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. If you count Minka Fitzpatrick as a 1st-round pick, obviously you'd move the Steelers up, but he's technically not, so you stick with how it is. But I think all these teams improved from this draft and addressed positions in need, and they all did well. Let me know who you think won out at AFC North. Name some of the picks you love the most or you thought were the worst, biggest reach, steal, etc. Talk to me in the comment section below. You can let me know what division you think I should do next. I'm probably going to do the NFC North. So, yeah, let me know who you thought won the AFC North draft, who you thought lost. Maybe rank them 1 through 4 like I did. And if you're a fan of either of these teams, any of these teams, and you disagree with me on anything, feel free to let me know. We can talk about it. All right, thank you guys for watching. Sorry I got real fast at the end. I had a time limit of 29:52, and I'm already at 29:30. Got to get better space on my phone, but it records pretty high quality. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. This is KMA Preston signing out. Stay tuned for more NFL draft grade content.